free tools. And so I'm Holly Benson. I'm with the Milwaukee Public Library's Education and Outreach Services Department. And with this department, we want to share with you LibraryNow. LibraryNow is how your students can get fast-tracked access to all of our library digital resources. And it's available free for Milwaukee students, and it's available 24/7. So specifically this month during our curriculum deep dive, we're going to talk about language learning. We're going to talk about how our students can work on their language acquisition, whether it's a second additional language or English as a second language. There's a lot of tools that are available through LibraryNow. We're going to highlight two of those. The first is Mango, which is incredible. It is the #1 most highly rated language learning app that is available. And then we're also going to talk about Pronunciator. And they both have similar skills that they help your students develop language acquisition, but they do it in slightly different ways. So you might find one is best for your students for independent learning. You might find one that's best for your students during your school day. So first, we will always talk about access, how your students can get to LibraryNow, how they can connect with LibraryNow resources. Then we'll make connections to your curriculum, specifically how your students can use our resources for acquiring new languages. And then we will talk about perks. So what is LibraryNow? LibraryNow is an easy to use website for students. All they have to do, is to go to librarynow.org, and then they have access to all of our digital resources. With a LibraryNow partner school, your student can get to all of these resources with as simple as their student ID. And how your student does that, we have 70,000 students already in our network, already connected, and we create a partnership so that your student, instead of needing a 20-digit library card, they will only need to know their student ID number and their PIN, which is often set to their birth year. And if you're ever confused about what convention your school is using for your student ID or employee ID to access the teacher virtual card, feel free to reach out to us at librarynow@milwaukee.gov. So let's get into it. I want to specifically address language as it relates to culture. And so I'm just going to actually read this quote. Language is a pillar of any culture and central to the identity of its members. Religious ceremonies are often performed in native tongues. Thunder, the Potawatomi elder, says his parents and elders told him that when their language is no longer spoken, the tribe will cease to exist. A comment echoed at other tribes around Wisconsin. And this was actually presented in a news article. And in that news article, the tribe, Forest County Potawatomi, it found that there was only 7 first language speakers of the Potawatomi language. So there's only 7 people who were born into speaking Potawatomi as their first language. And so I wanted to think about these language tools also as a way to embrace cultures and help preserve cultures over time. And one way we can do that is with Mango. So I'm going to play this short video real quick to help us kind of get a little crash course in Mango. And honestly, the Mango has such great educational resources that I kind of wanted to just give a little preview of what Mango can provide.
This is Mango Languages, built to help you start the conversation in over 70 world languages and dialects by gaining proficiency in speaking, listening, reading, and culture. It's language learning done right, covering topics and phrases that you'll actually use in real conversations. We take those phrases and break them down piece by piece, allowing you to commit them to memory. You'll notice Mango's unique color mapping, helping you connect the language intuitively, seeing the relationships between words and stealthily picking up grammar cues. And Mango is interactive, helping you to sound out even the trickiest words. Mango only uses audio from native speakers, so you can hear new words correctly and say it right with voice comparison, a better way to gauge your pronunciation by seeing and hearing it compare to our native speaker audio. Strengthen your knowledge with our grammar and cultural notes, gaining grammar competency and context and a deeper cultural understanding. And when it's time to bring everything back together, you'll have the confidence to do it yourself and even build upon what you've learned, empowering you to start the conversation. Visit mangolanguages.com to try it for yourself.
Awesome. So yes, I think that the Mango Languages is a great tool. I really think the Pronunciator option allows our students to not only be able to, excuse me, I'm having a hard time getting out. There we go. Allows us to help our students really connect and feel confident with how they're saying the word and that their pronunciation is correct. I also personally use this as a mother. I had a book where my daughter would hear different ways that good night is said in different languages. And I was not confident in being able to share them. So I went on Mango and actually looked up how to pronounce them, practiced them myself, so that at night I could very fluently say good night in several different languages and make that part of her cultural experience as well. So I really like it as a way just to, if you want to be able to greet a family member and know that you're pronunciating that greeting well or saying goodbye to them with correct pronunciation, I think Mango is just a great place to help you do that. Okay, so with Mango, there are many different languages that are available for your students or yourself to study. I'm gonna hide my meeting controls here. Everything from Arabic to Yiddish, there's only over 70 different languages. And key to Milwaukee is I want to highlight some of the languages that are important to Milwaukee currently. So we have schools that have immersion programs such as that have Chinese language, French, German, Spanish. Hmong is not currently available at this time. That is a question that's asked. But as soon as it becomes available, we will let you know. But currently we have Chinese, French, German, Spanish immersion schools. And we have Mango here who can help them for free 24/7 for our students. Additionally, we have refugees who have just joined our community. And so what a great way it would be to welcome them. And so we also have Dari and Pashto, which are Afghan languages that are available with Mango. And then we also have Potawatomi. So with that partnership between Potawatomi, a Potawatomi tribe and Mango, they actually created a whole module centered on the Potawatomi language. And that's a wonderful way to celebrate Native American history and culture, have your students learn Potawatomi language. So along with that is that cultural competence. One thing that I really am proud of that Milwaukee Public Library partners with Mango and has a relationship with them is because Mango has a specific ideal towards cultural competence and preserving language. And you see that in the partnership between the Potawatomi tribe. They developed this in partnership so that we could help preserve that the endangered language of the Potawatomi people. And then Adventures in Language is a great example of where teachers can go. And Mango has a podcast for educators where they can learn about helping students with language acquisition and also helping students with cultural diverse conversations in their classroom. And then throughout the Mango experience, so your students will learn a series of phrases, break down those phrases, and then every so often, Mango throws in a cultural note or a grammar note that helps students understand what's culturally significant in this language that they're studying and therefore in this culture. So for example, this is one from, I believe, the Pashto language. When you are greeted, this means may peace be upon you. And then your students will hear this. This is just a screenshot of it. Your students will hear that greeting again and again, and they'll know that this actually means may peace be upon you. And I think it's a beautiful way to start understanding the culture and sometimes how hello is not an exact translation. And then there's also grammar notes throughout that also kind of talk about the culture and also talk about what's culturally appropriate. So we want our students to be confident in using their language, but we also as educators want to be confident in speaking to families. And so honestly, I think even if you could only learn a few phrases with Mango, if you have a student from an Arabic family or you have a student from a Spanish family, it doesn't hurt. It actually really creates wonderful cultural relationships between you and the family to kind of look at these culture notes and know, you know what, if my student is coming from this upbringing, it's not going to be appropriate if I have a one-on-one meeting with a father in a room. So it kind of just helps you as an educator as well to be aware of the culture. And then this is another example of a culture note that I found that was just absolutely beautiful. And it talks about, the philosophies and ideals of that culture. And I'm going to read this one, actually. I think it's really interesting. In his best-selling book, Lone Survivor, Navy SEAL Marcus Luttrell shares a story of his encounter with the ancient Pashtun code of conduct called Pashtunwale. He was badly wounded by Taliban forces in the Afghan mountains. Upon finding him, the local villagers adamantly adhered to the Pashtunwale code of hospitality, which demands fierce loyalty to the guests. They willingly risked their own lives to provide him with shelter and protection from the Taliban. What a neat way to have a stop and discuss moment in your lesson. So if your students are, pursuing studying the Pashto language and they come across this culture note, have them share that cultural note with their class and talk about that. What does that mean? How can we embrace Pashtunwali cultural philosophies in our own classroom? How can we be demanding, fierce loyalty to guests in our classroom? Frankly, it'd be really nice for a substitute teacher who arrived if we had students who were fiercely loyal to the guest. And so here is the language learning like the video showed. It will take phrases, and I'll prepare the student with phrases, break them down, they'll learn different parts. They'll be able to hear it, they'll be able to speak it and compare their pronunciation, and they can do that again and again. And then it will build on that. So they'll take that individual word, they'll add more word parts, and they'll create sentences. This is an example of a reading passage that's available on Mango, where students can read a discussion between two speakers, and then they're pulling out the main ideas and details. So this is really great for some of the students who, once they have worked on their speaking and listening, we want to start developing that writing and thinking skills and thoughtfully reading materials. This is a great way to help your students get more exposure to language in written language. So along with the languages your students can learn, we also have the ability with Mango for students or families to learn English. And I think it's really important that we know about this resource so that we can share it with our families if they ever have an interest or need to learn the English language. For students in the English as a second language class, this is a great tool to help them feel safe in practicing a skill that they might not want to make public yet to their peers. They don't want to sound, funny in saying something. They can actually work on their pronunciation in private at home and also work on this skill at their own pace. With the language learning option, Mango will ask our students or families to also choose their mother tongue. And so students do not need to be able to come in being able to read some English in order to follow Mango's course. It will actually have several languages for students to come to, several languages students can have a mother tongue in order to learn the English through Mango. And here you do see Hmong is available. So for any of our Hmong families, this is a great opportunity for them if they are interested. So that is Mango. Mango is really great. It has a wonderful mobile app. And I want to switch a little bit to Pronunciator. This is another language learning resource through the Milwaukee Public Library. And what is different about Pronunciator is that while Mango has courses built in and you can choose which courses you kind of want to do, Pronunciator really allows a lot of customization in the language learning course that your students are pursuing. So Pronunciator, not as streamlined or as really clear and visually appealing and mobile friendly as Mango, but also it is very robust when it comes to having choice and control and practicing specific language skills. And I'm going to talk about that. So with Pronunciator, your students are going to create an account. And there's one important kind of trick here we want to be mindful of. When they go to Pronunciator for the first time, they're going to put in their information. They're going to want to register. And it's going to ask them if they want to launch Pronunciator or if they want to update their account. And I didn't get a screenshot of that specific question, but we want to have our students update their account preferences first before they launch into Pronunciator, because they need to set up their student name. So once their student name is set up, they can then return to easily access their information again. So again, they will register for an account. If they go through librarynow.org, they don't have to pay for anything. They've passed all of our paywalls. They're going to register for the account. But first, we want them to go into the account. They're going to have two options: launch Pronunciator or modify their account. We want them to do that first so that they can put in their student name and put in their email address. So after they do that, they are given two choices with Pronunciator. They choose the language they speak, and they choose the language they want to learn. And they can speak multiple languages and they can learn multiple languages. Pronunciator has hundreds of languages for your students to choose from. Some languages have more robust courses than others. This is an example of the Japanese course, where there's daily lessons, personalized courses, main courses, as well as learning guides. And so this one has kind of all the great features that Pronunciator can provide your students. With the learning guides, this is where your students can kind of have a specific targeted need or interest, as well as it's a place where they can work on some progression of skills. So maybe at the start of the school year, while you're kind of gauging all your students, you can have them do like a refresher course. They can pick, if they're a beginner, high, low, intermediate, or high intermediate, and they can kind of do a refresher as you get to know your students, or maybe have one-on-one conferences with them to get to know their ability level. So that's a great place for your students to work, as well as they have learning guides that are very current, such as helping students understand COVID-19, how to use that in the language of their class. This is what a typical page would look like on Pronunciator. And so you would hear the phrase spoken, you would have a chance to repeat it and practice it again and again. This is a part of daily lessons. So this daily lesson is only 6 minutes and 30 seconds. And every daily lesson is a little bit different. So this one was about dinner. The day before it was about breakfast. And your students will have access to the daily lessons for 3 days. So it will progress every day. So when I went on here, it was like on day 65. So every day they come in, it's going to be a different topic for them to study and explore. This makes a really great warm up for your foreign language class. So all your students come in, they do their daily lesson. It's only 5 to 6 minutes. You're taking attendance, you're greeting your students at the door, you're making sure they have their materials, you're doing what you need to do, and your students are doing their daily lesson. And then you can then go and reinforce whatever that daily lesson topic was as you bring your class back together. With selecting the guides, your students have an ability to really dig into what's interesting for them for their courses. So for example, if they want to pursue language learning levels, they can talk about, I want to work on my core vocabulary, I want to work on my verbs, I want to work on my conversation skills. They really have the ability to pick and choose what specifically they want to do if they're going to build their curriculum. And then after they do that, they can drill down to even more specifics. So if they had picked essential verbs, they can then say, you know what, I really need to work on how to apologize. I offended my peer yesterday. I need to review how to apologize, or I need to work on, verbs for celebrations, or so they can actually pick and choose the topics that they want to work on. And then this is an example of, conversational ones. So the previous one was on verbs, this one's on conversational. So maybe they want to work on how to just have some chatting and how to small talk, or, what is some etiquette when you're talking about how to make an appointment, how do you do that in that language? So there are dozens of topics that they can choose from to help them with basic conversational guides and courses. And then there is a super personalized version where students, staff, or families, they can either select all the topics that interest them, or they can also select an occupation that interests them. So let's say that we have a family member who is pursuing nursing. They can actually learn all of the language associated with that occupation and really study it through the lens of that occupation. And the same for topics. So if you have students who are really into cars, or if you have students that are really into sports or pets, let them dig in and personalize their learning. You could have, literature circles where your students have together, in their group of 6 or 5 or 6, they've decided, we want to learn about how to talk about cars in this language. And so they, as a group, study that, and then they meet together and practice it. Here are a list of kind of all the occupations. I kind of just screenshot and jigsawed it together, just to kind of give you an idea that this is also a great tool for your families of different languages. So if you have a Spanish-speaking family and they're seeking employment in a predominantly English community, this is a great tool for them if they want to start, working on some English occupational language as well. They can pick the career that they're pursuing and then work on the language when they're able. And then same for skill. So with personalization, not only can you pick the topics or you can pick the occupation, but also you can pick the skill level. So if your student wants to do beginner, intermediate, or advanced, as well as they can pick the age range that they are at. They can pick the number of weeks that are in the course. They could pick how many new phrases are they able to learn in a day. So if they are limited on time, maybe they could do 4 phrases a day. But if they're doing it for a full class period, maybe we're shooting for 8 to 10 phrases a day. So you can help your students decide what is best for them as they are pursuing the language. And then also what I personally don't like quizzes. I do better with just practice and drills, and they can actually slide that counter more towards drills or more towards quizzes based on how they prefer to learn. And then the last piece of customization to their course is they could talk about that. They could select what's priorities to them. Do they really want to work on their speaking skills when it comes to this topic? Do they really want to work on their reading skills when it comes to this occupation? So your students are able to select those learning goals. And then they name the course so that they can come back to it. This is an example of a part of a course that I made, a practice course. And so this was week 12, day 1 of that course. And this was what I was working on. I had 4 slides that I was working on and working on that language. So that is all of the student-facing resources. I just want to point out, I'm not going to show a lot about it, but I just want to point out that there is one more awesome course designer, and that is for educators. So when your student actually chooses, I want to speak, I speak English and I want to learn French, underneath that, it's actually going to ask you if you're an educator and if you want to design a course. And it's going to take you to a separate account where you are going to actually design the course yourself. So this is a great way if you do not have a foreign language book, or you would like more ways to integrate the topics that are in those chapters of that book or the topics in your curriculum into a digital format. So your students are hearing the words more often. They're practicing those concepts. I really suggest you play around with Pronunciator Course Designer. Because of time, I'm not going to show how to use it, but there are a ton of tutorial videos to help you get started. It's a little bit clunky. It's like the first time you're to use Google Classroom, we all had a little bit of a learning curve. But once you figure out that you select which words, you select the phrases you want your students to learn, or you select whole bundles of topics, you're then able to send those right off to your students. So Pronunciator Course Designer, it's made for educators to serve our students, and it's free with the Milwaukee Public Library. So Mango is our #1 language learning app, most highly rated. It is really great for your students to learn on the go, learn with their phone. Pronunciator is where your students can really tailor their learning based on where they're at, what they want to learn, how, what topics in that language they want to learn about, as well as that space for you to do your own design. So Pronunciator creates great courses and personalization. Mango really has a lot of smart, intuitive applications that track your students' progress, provide reviews for your students on things that they may have lingered on or spent more time on, or need more reinforcement. So both wonderful resources available 24/7 with LibraryNow.